Hello everyone, I just want to welcome you back to my YouTube channel. Today is Wednesday, October the 20th, and I am back again. We're going to continue in the series I told you I was going to start about how God speaks. So I'm going to share with you another incident that happened the same day as the previous message was recorded, and how I believe the Lord was speaking to me. So once again, I'm outside. So if you hear a lot of noise in the background, it's traffic. However, hopefully you can still hear me clearly. The last recording wasn't as good because I had my earbuds in. So I realized that the sound was not as good as with me having them not in my phone. So this time I'm going to do it without my earbuds being in my phone, because I think the quality of the sound is better. So, okay, so let's get started. Okay, so again, this happened the same day as the last message that I recorded. So basically, I was sitting outside the Starbucks, and pretty much every afternoon there are some teenagers that are released from school. So they come over to the Starbucks and get their coffee, chill out, hang out. Sometimes they're inside, some of them are outside. There's quite a few of them. So this message, or this, what happened this particular day was pertaining to these teenagers that I was observing. So I'm sitting on one side. I'm on the patio, the outside part, and I'm sitting on one side, and see the teenagers as they're coming in. They're coming up through the patio to go into the Starbucks and get their drinks or their coffee. So at one point there were some kids that were seated on the same side as me, basically. There's tables on both sides, and so initially there were kids that were seated on the same side as me, and then they all kind of got up and moved to the other side, still outside on the patio. Of course, there were kids inside as well, some in the parking lot, pretty much all over. But basically, these kids that were seated on the same side as me, out on the patio or on the deck, got up and moved to the other side of the patio. And then there was this one kid that came and sat down on the same side that I was seated on. And he was the only one. He was the only one that sat there. So I just started paying attention. So I'm looking at this young man. He looked to be maybe around 14 or 15. And then I'm looking at the other kids on the other side, who they did appear to be older. Like they may have been 16, 17. They appear to be slightly older than this young man. So I'm just kind of taking it in, and I'm looking at the kids that are on the other side, and they all seem like the popular kids. Let me put it that way. They all seemed like they were the popular kids, that group, so to speak. Perhaps the athletes, I'm not sure. But the popular kids, let's just put it that way. Now, he was seated again by me, not necessarily close to me, right next to me, but he was seated on the same side as me, and he stayed there by himself, and he just sat there I started paying attention to him and just kind of the interaction between the two, if there was any interaction between the two. And there wasn't much interaction, but that doesn't mean that there was any kind of like beef or anything. But when he did get up to leave, he did kind of go over to the other side and exchange words with some of the other kids and kind of went on his way. So as I was just taking all of this in, I began to have thoughts. Certain scriptures began to come up to me, both as it pertained to this generation, as well as just there was certain verses that came up, and the verses that came up in my spirit were about the wheat and the tares, and the sheeps and the goats. Those were the verses that came up in my spirit as I was observing this situation. As well as just a message for this generation. So I'm going to read you the Bible verses that pertain to both of those scenarios. So the first one is found in Matthew chapter 13. Okay, again, this is Matthew chapter 13, and we're going to read verses 24 through 30. It says, "Another parable he put forth to them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. But when the grain had sprouted and produced a crop, then the tares also appeared. So the servants of the owner came and said to him, Sir, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have tares? He said to them, An enemy has done this." That's a powerful quote, isn't it? An enemy has done this. There's some things that happen in our lives that an enemy did. The servant said to him, "Do you want us then to go and gather them up?" But he said, "No, lest while you gather up the tares, you also uproot the wheat with them. Let them grow together until the harvest. And at the time of harvest, I will say to the reapers, First gather together the tares and bind them in bundles to burn them. But gather the wheat into my barn." Okay, so in reading that verse, there was a lot that I felt like the Lord was showing me. Both again as it pertains to the church, as well as again a message to these teenagers. Now, one of the things that I failed to mention, so in that verse, it talks about how the servant planted wheat, but then he went to sleep, and while he was asleep, his enemy came and planted tares. So what are tares? Tares are weeds that look like wheat. They're of no value. They're weeds. So the enemy came and planted weeds alongside the wheat that the servant had planted. And when his servants went out to harvest the field and it started to bud, when they started to bud, the servants that were working in the field realized, oh, there's wheats here. There's tares here. Where do these tares come from? So then they go and tell their master, and he says, An enemy has done this. It says, I know I planted wheat. I didn't plant any tares. An enemy has done this. Okay? So the enemy is trying to infect his harvest. All right? He's trying to infect his harvest with weeds, tares. So at that point, they asked, do you want us to separate them? And the king or the master says, no, lest you pull the weeds out with the tares. It was too early and too sensitive a situation for them to go ahead and pull out the tares, because if they had pulled out the tares at that stage, they would have also uprooted the wheat. Okay, so that's like money down the drain. So he said, no, we're gonna have to let them grow up together. Okay, and this is what made me think about, okay, back to the teenagers. So these teenagers, in a sense, they all look alike. Not physically. They wear a uniform. Okay? All of them wear a uniform. So all of them are dressed alike. You got it? Like the wheat and the tares. He said they got to grow up together. And looking at these teenagers, they all look alike because they're dressed alike. They wear uniforms. They wear khaki pants, and I want to say white shirts and I want to say blue jackets or something over. But anyway, they're dressed alike. They're in uniform. They look alike as it pertains to how they're dressed. Okay, but remember, some of the teenagers separated. There was a separation that took place. Okay, so back to the parable. So he says, no, we got to let them grow up together. Once they grow up together, they're mature enough, then I want you to go and pull the tares first, put them in a bundle, and we're going to burn them. Why? Because they have no purpose. It's weeds. You have these tares walking around perpetrating like wheat. They're not wheat. They're weeds. But if you look at them initially, kind of like you look at these, you look at these teenagers initially, they all look alike. They're all dressed alike. But there's a distinction. There's a difference. But we got to wait. We got to let them grow up. We got to let them mature. Good word. You got to let them mature. And then we can separate them. Then we'll be able to clearly see who's who. But while they're young, it's too early. It's too dangerous. If we separate them now, you're gonna take the good out with the bad. We can't afford to do that. So we gotta wait. We gotta let them grow up. We gotta let them mature. They're gonna grow up together like twins. But then we'll be better able to separate the weeds from the wheat, the true from the false, the pretentious from the authentic. Okay, this video is getting long, so I'm gonna have to do a part 2 for this one. Selah. Thank you for listening.